Okay, let's kind of talk about something that I didn't fully understand until I discovered God. Sometimes God's first gift to you is going to be isolation. It's not going to be applause, it's not going to be community, it's not even momentum. It's straight up distance. And we assume that something is wrong when life starts to get quiet, when your relationships fade, when your routines shift, and then the doors, they just stop opening. But what if the stillness is not rejection? What if it's renovation? So our brains, they don't just respond to the environment. It literally copies it. And your brain, it contains networks that's designed to mirror whatever you repeatedly see and hear. If you've ever heard the saying, you become the 5 people that you surround yourself with, well, this video is going to be a lot about that, because beliefs and emotional patterns and behaviors and even identity cues, like all of that gets mirrored. And so if you think about it, if God wanted you to grow into someone new, he's going to have to interrupt the environments that trained that old you. That is why isolation is not punishment, it's interruption, essentially. And the same thing happened to me. Before I found God, I expected connection and I expected this community and people that I could lean on. But instead, what I got was silence. My friend groups, they just fell apart. The support systems, they just dried up. And it felt like I was literally walking without a village, and I thought that it meant that I was failing somehow. But I didn't understand it, because none of my friendships, they didn't like fall off. I didn't have anyone that was upset with me. I didn't have, anything crazy happen. They just literally all slowly dissolved, and then I was alone. I went through postpartum twice without a friend group. I didn't even have a baby shower the second time, because I was like, what's the point? Nobody was there. Nobody checked in. Nobody asked me if I was okay. And it was really a dark time for me, and I felt very painfully alone. Mostly because I already am naturally an introverted person, and so I have a hard time putting myself out there. And I thought that it meant that I was failing somehow. But now, in hindsight, it wasn't abandonment. It was just deprogramming, basically. God was just removing the voices that I had unconsciously mirrored for years. He was just quieting the noise long enough for me to finally hear him and then myself. You can't become the person that God is forming if you're still living that old identity that you built for survival. That's why God hides people. That's why he removes people from your life. Moses, he met him alone in a desert. It wasn't in the palace. Even Joseph, he matured in prison for years. It took him 13 years, I think, for him to get his palace. Jesus was forming anonymously for decades before we even read his first public sentence. God does his deepest formation in private. It's not because you're unworthy of connection. It's because connection too early can just contaminate your identity. And when everything goes quiet around you, your internal world just finally gets loud enough to confront. And it's really beautiful, because you then start noticing and you start saying, what do I really want? What do I actually believe? Who am I if there's no audience? And then that discomfort and that ache and just the craving for the answers, you end up recognizing that it's not abandonment. It's just birth pain, basically. Your brain literally rewires when you're in solitude. And the neural pathways that are linked to the old roles and the versions of you, they just begin to die. And the stories that you lived under, they just lose that authority. And the automatic patterns, they weaken because they're not being reinforced. That's pruning. That is spiritual pruning. It's scientifically synaptic elimination, but it's just the same thing, basically. And in that silence, God is going to become the voice that shapes you. And the person that you once mirrored doesn't get the final say anymore. They don't get to decide who you are and who you get to become. You end up learning to see yourself through God, not through the culture, not through the trauma or the old wounds. It's not through the people who needed you to be that version of yourself. And that changed everything for me. When I finally realized that, the loneliness, it didn't magically disappear, but I just stopped feeling so empty. It became intentional. And I started realizing that God wasn't withholding my community. He was just preventing contamination. And one by one, he's been slowly just adding people here and there. He was literally detoxing me and removing those mirrors that were deforming me, which is crazy. He needed me to become the one that I reflect. Now, something that you might not realize as well is that before God trusts you with influence, he has to take anyone away who could claim that they made you. And he'll block the applause so that it doesn't become your oxygen. And so that affirmation doesn't become your idol. He has to let rejection happen so that the approval that you're desperately seeking for stops controlling you. Only then can you really be elevated, because the identity can just finally hold it. And so if you feel hidden right now, if you feel shut out, stripped down, if you feel unseen, maybe the black sheep, you are not being punished. You are just being prepared right now. There is a version of you that God is extracting, that crowds can't form and community can't produce and the affirmation can't sustain. The hidden seasons, they are holy. And isolation is not exile. This is incubation. God's removing what trained you so that he can introduce who he actually made you to become. You're not forgotten. God's just saying, hey, no one gets to shape you but me. God's got you. Don't hate the quiet. Learn to like it, because you start listening, you'll start hearing little things. And when it feels like desert, you're going to actually start seeing the grass that's growing underneath. And it's going to be really cool. You're just being rewired right now. And the moment that you do finally get to be revealed, that room that you walk into, it's not going to recreate the version of you that he already got to redeem. If you like my videos, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know if there's anything that really related with you. Let me know if you guys have any questions, if there's any other specific topics that you'd like me to talk about. I'd love to keep diving in deeper on these. I see your messages. I see you guys letting me know to keep going. I'm going to keep doing this. I want to keep doing more deep dives and, videos on my social channels and everything like that. But don't forget to like, subscribe, all that stuff that you're supposed to say.